Welcome to the Independent Advisors Podcast, where we dive into the world of stocks, tradable markets, and financial planning with Jessup Wealth Management's Chief Investment Officer, Mark McEvily, and CEO, Matt Jessup. You'll hear tips, tricks, and strategies to address your financial well-being and, most importantly, conveyed in a way that everyone can understand. Here are your hosts, Mark and Matt.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 232 of the Independent Advisors Podcast, where Matt Jessup and I, Mark McEvily, bring you everything you need to know from the past week in the world of financial markets and financial planning. This week, I am flying solo during the shortened holiday week. I'm going to keep this episode brief and just give a few updates that I think are important for listeners. As always, we will quickly review the month-to-date and year-to-date performance of the major market indices that we track. This data is from YCharts, and as of the market close on December 27th. S&P 500 index up 4.7% during the month of December and up 24.5% for the year. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 4.7% for the month and up 13.6% for the year. The NASDAQ Composite Index up 6.1% for the month and up 44% for the year. The small cap Russell 2000 Index up 14% in December and up 17.5% on the year. Last but not least, the Vanguard All World ex United States ETF up 3.2% for the month and up 11.9% for the year. 3-month Treasury rate sitting at 5.44%, the 2-year Treasury rate at 4.2%, and the 10-year Treasury rate at 3.79%. So for the 10-year Treasury rate, it actually dropped to a 5-month low of, like I said, that 3.79% number after being at almost 5% in mid-October. So quite the fall from grace, if you will, for treasuries, as stocks have, picked up the baton and rates have come in. Moving on to tweets, articles, and research from this week. The first thing I had was a tweet from Ryan Dietrich and a snippet from the Chart Report newsletter on December 20th. Before I kind of get into what Ryan tweeted, we've made it a habit on the podcast during the past few years that the last few weeks of the year and the first few weeks of the new year, we discuss something called the Santa Claus Rally. And the Santa Claus Rally refers to the last 5 trading days of the year and the first 2 trading days of the new year. And in 2023, the Santa Claus Rally was from December 22nd of last week through January 3rd of 2024 next week. And this 7-day trading period has historically been a pretty good indicator of how the stock market will perform in the new year. And when the last 5 trading days of the year and the first 2 trading days of the new year have a combined positive return for the S&P 500, the new year tends to be pretty strong for stocks. And when the Santa Claus Rally produces a negative return for the S&P 500, the new year is often weak. So far, we are 3 days into this Santa Claus Rally. Day 1, the S&P 500 was up 0.17%. Day 2, S&P was up 0.41%. And day 3, yesterday, on Wednesday, the S&P 500 was up 0.14% for a total return of plus 0.72% for the first 3 days of the Santa Claus Rally. So obviously have 2 more trading days left in 2023, and then the first 2 trading days of 2024 to round out the Santa Claus Rally for this year. But things are off to a good start. So getting back to what Ryan Dietrich tweeted back on December 20th, and Jenna will put this tweet and chart up on the show notes and for the YouTube viewers. He says, over the past 30 years, the big warning has been when there was no Santa Claus Rally. Years like 2000 and 2008 saw potential warning signs when Santa didn't show up. The chart report also goes on to clarify that the official Santa Claus rally period begins on Friday, which obviously was last Friday. The seasonal phenomenon was first published in 1972 by Yale Hirsch in the Stock Traders Almanac. The Santa Claus rally refers to December's last 5 trading days and first 2 trading days of the new year. It has historically been one of the most bullish 7-day stretches of the year regarding both win rate and average return. Since 1950, the S&P 500 rose nearly 80% of the time for an average gain of 1.32%. The Santa Claus rally can also set the tone for the year ahead. When the S&P 500 has failed to rally during the seasonally bullish period, Ryan points out that the following year has been subpar at best. So in this chart on the screen, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the years where the Santa Claus rally was negative, and you can see, the following calendar year is pretty weak relative to history. So this is definitely something we're going to keep tracking over the next couple of days. And is if Santa does show up for this year, then that to us possibly means good things ahead in 2024. My second and final item for listeners was from a blog post from JC Peretz with All-Star Charts on December 20th as well, titled Perfectly Normal Market Behavior. And we often talk about seasonality on this show to discuss how the market usually performs during certain times throughout any given year. And I wanted to provide an update to listeners on where we stand in the 4-year presidential cycle, which we have, talked about, a lot, especially this year and over the past couple of years. So up on the YouTube page and in the show notes, Jenna will throw up this chart. And as you can see in this chart, this is the 4-year presidential cycle. So obviously we're heading into year 4 of the cycle, which was also referred to as the election year. And the election year tends to be pretty strong on average for stocks, as you can see here on the screen. The blue line is the average 4-year S&P 500 performance, and the red line is the actual performance of the S&P 500 from the beginning of 2021 until about the end of 2023. So as you can see, this 4-year presidential cycle has tracked pretty close to history. And we don't really look at, the magnitude of the performance, more so the trend of how things shape up. And as you can see in, year 1 or the post-election year, the midterm year, year 2, and year 3, the pre-election cycle, this 4-year cycle has tracked pretty dang close to what we've seen throughout history. So this isn't to say that 2024 won't be a weak year for the markets. As we know, anything can happen, but here at JWM, we like to use history as our guide. And politics aside, election years have been positive most of the time for the S&P 500. We are going to skip over the financial planning topic of the week just so I can keep this as short as possible for listeners. But before signing off for 2023, I just want to remind people that if you want to create your own podcast, please use the code Jessup Wealth to get your first month of Blueberry podcast hosting for free. To choose the ideal plan for you, use the hosting estimator on their website. Again, you can receive your first month free with promo code Jessup Wealth, all lowercase and no spaces. So thanks everybody for listening to episode 232 of the Independent Advisors podcast. We want to be the first to wish you all a very happy new year. And as we step into this new year, we want to take a moment to express our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for your support and dedication in tuning into our podcast. Your enthusiasm and engagement mean the world to us. And we want to just thank you for being part of our podcasting journey, for lending us your ears and allowing us to share stories, insights, and knowledge with you week after week. Your feedback, encouragement, and loyalty inspires Matt and I to keep creating content that resonates with you. And we just want everyone to know that we hope that this new year brings you joy, success, endless opportunities, and here's to another year filled with hopefully fascinating conversations, learning, and entertainment together on our podcast. Our goal every year is always to get better and better and to keep delivering content that all of our listeners want to hear. Also, special thank you to Jenna Rittenhouse, our marketing director, for producing, editing this podcast. She plays a very big role in putting this out every single week to listeners. So next time, if you're calling into the office or stopping in the office, make sure to say thank you to Jenna. That's it, everybody, and we will be back with you for the first episode in 2024.
Thank you for listening to the Independent Advisors Podcast. If you're interested in hearing more, hit the subscribe button so you can be notified every time a new episode gets released. Feel free to share with friends, family, and follow us on Twitter at Jessup Wealth, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Mark and Matt will continue to share beneficial information on these social media sites. Also, check out the podcast tab on their website. That's www.jessupwealthmanagement.com. There you'll find links to every episode of the Independent Advisors. Have questions or topics you want to discuss on the show? Message us on Twitter, LinkedIn, or send an email with the words questions and topics in the subject line to inquiries@jessupwealthmanagement.com. We'll talk about it right here on the podcast. Certain sections of this commentary may contain forward-looking statements based on reasonable expectations, estimates, projections, and assumptions. Forward-looking statements are not guarantees of future performance and involve certain risks and uncertainties which are difficult to predict. All indices are unmanaged and are not available for direct investment by the public. Past performance is not indicative of future results. This podcast is provided for general informational purposes only and does not constitute either tax, legal, or financial advice. Although we do go to great lengths to make sure our information is accurate and useful, we recommend you consult a tax preparer, professional tax advisor, financial advisor, or lawyer regarding your specific circumstances. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. No strategy can guarantee any objective or goal will be achieved.